Hi guys, so I need to finish chapter 8 because I did it before the Easter holidays. I haven't really been online. I totally forgot I haven't even finished it. So we're currently in this book up to page 34 and about 6 lines down. So you can see here where it's got the little star. This is beyond me, Paul, said the lawyer. Let us go back to the cabinet. Now if you're using this one, even though I'm not using it yet because my notes are in that one, we're on page 85. And it's just on page 85, it's sort of 2/3 towards the bottom, and you can see there's a new paragraph at the bottom there. And it starts with, they mounted the stair in silence. Okay, so remember they've just found the body of Edward Hyde, who's killed himself because he could hear them breaking in. They can't find Hyde. There's no way in or out of the cabinet other than the way that they've come in and out, and nobody's come in and out. So they're really confused about where Hyde is. They found the key that's been broken, trodden on, and it's rusted, so it's been there a while. So nobody has been able to come in and out that back door for a period of time long enough to be able to rust the key. So it seems like an impossible mystery at the minute. Where is Mr. Hyde? Because the last thing Paul has seen is that Hyde was in there. And oh God, you can tell I've had a holiday. The last that Paul knew was that Jekyll was in there, and now Hyde's killed himself in there. So Paul is very confused, and they're both really freaked out. They mounted the stair in silence, and still, with an occasional awestruck glance at the dead body, proceeded more thoroughly to examine the contents of the cabinet. At one table, there were traces of chemical work, various measured heaps of some white salt being laid on glass saucers, as though for an experiment in which the unhappy man had been prevented. "That is the same drug that I was always bringing him," said Paul, and even as he spoke, the kettle, with a startling noise, boiled over. This brought them to the fireside, where the easy-chair was drawn cosily up, and the tea-things stood ready to the sitter's elbow, the very sugar in the cup. There were several books on a shelf. One lay beside the tea-things open, and Utterson was amazed to find it a copy of the pious work for which Jekyll had several times expressed a great esteem, annotated in his own hand with startling blasphemies. Okay, so post-it noting here or writing in the margin is that it seems really weird. So the kettle was actually on to make a cup of tea. All of the very civilised way of making tea was all set out with china and a little sugar cube inside. So it kind of feels not like a monster making tea. It feels like someone like Dr. Jekyll making tea. Weird. Why is it in the middle of being made when he then just committed suicide? Very strange. Can you please also highlight where it says about the book? So the last three lines. It says, Utterson was amazed to find a copy of a pious work. Now the word pious, if you circle that and put a little post-it note or a note down the side, pious means religious and like sacred and highly respected. So I'm assuming it's a Bible. And it's one that Utterson knows Jekyll has really, really liked this particular copy. It's perhaps a favourite copy of his. And yet, in Jekyll's handwriting all over it are blasphemies. Now, blasphemies are swear words, expletives, things that are anti-God, things that are taking the Lord's name in vain. So somebody, Jekyll's handwriting is all over his favourite copy of the Bible with horrible blasphemies all over it. So it doesn't seem to make any sense to Jekyll. So I've written in my margin here, how and why has Jekyll changed so much? So why something that he loved before is he now ruining? Next, in the course of their review of the chamber, the searchers came to the cheval glass, into whose depth they looked with an involuntary horror. Please highlight that. Or if you're underlining in pencil, maybe underline it in pencil. So involuntary there, the shock is a response, not something that they're able to think about. They can't rationalise any of this because there doesn't seem to be any rational explanation for it. But it was so turned as to show them nothing but the rosy glow playing on the roof, the fire sparkling in 100 repetitions along the glazed front of the presses, and their own pale and fearful countenances stooping to look in. "This glass has seen some strange things, sir," whispered Paul. "And surely none stranger than itself," echoed the lawyer in the same tone. For what did Jekyll... He caught himself up at the word with a start, and then, conquering the weakness, "What could Jekyll want with it?" he said. "You may say that," said Paul. So what are they talking about here? Oh, the cheval glass was that big mirror, wasn't it? And so the mirror is reflecting nothing particularly interesting, and they can't understand why he would want to look in it. And they're saying that the glass has seen some strange things because the mirror is in the room and has seen all the craziness, whatever that may be, that's been in there. Sorry. I'm teaching myself as I go here. Okay. Next, they turned to the business table. On the desk, among the neat array of papers, a large envelope was uppermost and bore in the doctor's hand the name of Mr. Utterson. So I've circled the large envelope and I've written in the margin, this has all the information that we need to figure out the mystery. So in this envelope is everything that Utterson needs and everything we as the reader need to be able to figure out what is going on. So this is the big drama for the reader. So if you write big drama for the reader, all the information we need to figure out the mystery. So write that somewhere. You see I've written it sort of along there. Okay. The lawyer unsealed it and several enclosures fell to the floor. The first was a will, drawn in the same eccentric terms as the one which he had returned 6 months before, to serve as a testament in case of death and as a deed of gift in case of disappearance. But in place of the name Edward Hyde, the lawyer, with indescribable amazement, read the name of Gabriel John Utterson. So Jekyll has changed his will so that none of it is left to Hyde. It's all left to Utterson now, including if he disappears. He looked at Poole, then back at the papers, and last of all at the dead malefactor stretched upon the carpet. "My head goes round," he said. "He has been all these days in possession. He had no cause to like me. He must have raged to see himself displaced, and he had not destroyed this document." So he's thinking, well, hang on a minute. If Hyde is so... He must have been angry to find out that the will had been changed. Why would he not destroy the will? Why would he rage around killing himself and destroying half of the apartment or whatever and not destroy the document? Very odd. He caught the next paper. It was a brief note in the doctor's hand and dated at the top. "Oh, Poole," the lawyer cried. "He was alive and here this day. He cannot have been disposed of in so short a space. He must be still alive. He must have fled. And why? And then why fled? And how? And in that case, can we venture to declare this suicide? Oh, we must be careful. I foresee that we may yet involve your master in some dire catastrophe." So, Utterson is like the upstanding member of the community, and yet he's like, ooh, well, hang on a minute. What if Jekyll's fled and he's got something to hide? Maybe we shouldn't tell the police about the suicide yet because we might be implicating your master, to Poole, my friend. So for someone who likes the rule, he is also quite happy to break the rule for his friend if that were to suit his reputation, even in death or if he's run away from whatever it is he's run away from, even if he's done something really bad. "Why don't you read it, sir?" asked Poole. "Because I fear," replied the lawyer solemnly. "God grant I have no cause for it." And with that he brought the paper to his eye and read as follows. "My dear Utterson, when this shall fall into your hands, I shall have disappeared under what circumstances I have not the penetration to foresee. But my instincts and all the circumstances of my nameless situation tell me that the end is sure and must be early. Go then, and first read the narrative which Lanyon warned me he was to place in your hands. And if you care to hear more, turn to the confession of your unworthy and unhappy friend, Henry Jekyll." So can you please post-it note this whole section with the little... Because this is actually Jekyll's voice now. So in terms of narrative style, it's all being told third person, but kind of from Utterson's perspective. This is actually Henry Jekyll's voice. And he is saying, if I'm gone now, I'm not coming back. You will never see me again. He then says... please highlight the line where it says, "First read the narrative which Lanyon warned me he was to place in your hands." So he's saying, now you can go and read that note that you were given. That I know you're a good man and you won't have read it, and he's put it in his safe. We know that as the reader. And then he says, if you want to hear more, turn to the confession. Please highlight the word confession. Confession is where you tell somebody your sins. Write that on a post-it note or put it down the margin. Sins. And then if you could please highlight unworthy and unhappy. So, poor Henry Jekyll. I've got like a minute left on this before I'm going to get cut off, so I'm going to finish this last bit. Am I going to? Yes, I am. "There was a third enclosure?" asked Utterson. "Here, sir," said Poole, and gave into his hands a considerable packet sealed in several places. The lawyer put it in his pocket. "I would say nothing of this paper. If your master has fled or is dead, we may at least save his credit. It is now 10. I must go home and read these documents in quiet, but I shall be back before midnight, when we shall send for the police." They went out, locking the door of the theatre behind them, and Utterson, once more leaving the servants gathered about the fire in the hall, trudged back to his office to read the 2 narratives in which this mystery was now to be explained. Please highlight that last line. So, everything is is going to become clear now. We're going to find out what on earth happened to Lanyon. Remember, he had this altercation and something happened, and 2 weeks later he died. That's all we know so far. And we've got this really big fat envelope, which is the third thing, which is the confession of your unworthy and unhappy friend Jekyll. Listen, I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to stop here. That's the end of chapter 8. Make sure you do a chapter summary where you bullet point all the things that we've either found out or things that have happened. Okay? All right. Bye now.